Welcome to the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be revealing my FPL team for Game Week 7, talking about my potential transfers, my captain, and also my future chip plans. I'll be honest, right at the start of this video, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to be doing this week. I might be taking a hit, but I'm definitely taking at least one transfer to bring in an Arsenal player. But we will get into all my potential pathways and possibilities in just a second. Let's start by looking back at Game Week 6, where I used my triple captain on Haaland, and yeah, obviously it went well. Quite fortunate there, I'm going to be honest, but you would have expected a couple of returns, I reckon, on average. Haaland at home to Burnley, so 48, definitely on the high end, but I will absolutely take that. I did take a hit last week, my first hit in about, I think, a year and a half. I didn't take a hit for the entirety of last season. So we're talking maybe, 16, 17 months ago, back in May of 2024. Which didn't feel great, but I sold Salah for, obviously, and Dye, who came in. Slightly disappointing, but Salah, I think, had to go. And with that money, Haaland came in for Wood. I kept Watkins, which worked out very well. Decided to get rid of Wood and just have a little bit of patience with Watkins, which paid off. And now I've got the Burnley at home game for him next week, which I'm happy with. I'm happy with that decision. So yeah, overall, a very good game week. Rank is now inside the top 800k. Still, again, not where I want to be, but I feel like I'm catching back the people who used their chips very early on. And my wildcard, I've still got to play. That I think I'll play next week, but we'll talk about that later. I'm not 100% sure on that either, and that will affect my transfer plans for this week. But across the rest of the team, relatively disappointing. Senesi and Semenyo have been so good for me this season. Everyone else, relatively poor, apart from Watkins. Wirtz, the main issue. Yes, he's still in my team, but he will be leaving this week. Okay, so this is how my team is shaping up for Game Week 7. I have one free transfer to use, and as I just said, Wirtz definitely is going. Wirtz is going to go for SAKA this week. That is a nailed-on move, unless there's any injuries. SAKA came through the Champions League game. He only played half an hour, looked very sharp when he came on, could have had an assist, scored a very good goal, well-taken goal from the left-hand side, which I think is quite positive as well. I do think that yeah, obviously, SAKA is Arsenal's best attacker. He's been Arteta's man for so many years now. I think when he is back to full fitness, which I think he is close, I think he'll then get back to those 90-minute appearances, which we're used to. Even despite Madueke being, his understudy now, I feel like there's going to be more change on that left-hand side, and maybe SAKA will be the one that stays on. I'm hoping a little bit that that's true, but yeah, I need some Arsenal players, obviously, for West Ham at home. So that transfer is 100% happening. Then the next potential move I have to do is a hit for an Arsenal defender. Now, whether I take that hit or not really depends on whether I think I'm going to wildcard in Game Week 8 or not. And right now, I would say I'm leaning towards wildcarding in Game Week 8. I'd say I'm probably 75% likely to do it. But if I don't do it, then I think it would be worth taking the hit this week to get that Arsenal defender in. Now, obviously, we saw in the Champions League that Gabriel went off with an injury. I do think that was pretty precautionary and a decent excuse even for Arteta to give him a slight rest at the end of the game. I would expect him to play against West Ham, but I think as a non-owner, it's enough to put me off going for him, just because he's not 100% nailed like he usually is. So if we look at other Arsenal defenders, I think Timber is the one that potentially stands out as a great option. He's actually got more expected goal involvement than Gyökeres this season, which is a pretty crazy stat. It's still only 5.8 million, despite a few price rises, of course. West Ham at home, just a really good entry point. The only thing I worry about with Timber is the rotation. Now, he hasn't been rotated yet for a Premier League game, I don't think. Maybe he might have missed one. I don't think he has, though. But Ben White played the majority of the game against Olympiacos in the Champions League. And I do feel like when we get towards these easier fixtures, but the Champions League fixtures are still there. Say, Arteta thinks, well, it's Fulham away after the international break, then a tough Champions League game, then Palace, then maybe another tough Champions League game. Does Timber get that rest? Burnley away, for example. I don't think he's going to play every single game in, well, obviously every single Arsenal game, and therefore I don't think he's going to play every single Premier League game, because I think in those certain key Champions League games where you don't have as simple a fixture as an easier team at home, he will want him to play in those games. He's going to have to get a rest somewhere, I think. Whereas someone like a Gabriel, when he's fully fit, he doesn't really need a rest. Just a more arduous position, really, fullback, isn't it? And they have a great understudy in Ben White. So I'm not 100% sure on Timber. I think right now I'm leaning towards just making the one transfer. I think if Pedro Porro feels like he's going to play, I don't think it's worth the hit to go from a Nico Williams to Gabriel to then bench Porro or Anderson maybe. But I'll make those transfers on Fantasy Football Hub's My Team tool and see how that affects things. I got up to a 94% team rating, and the team I think looks pretty strong for Gameweek 7. As I said, that SAKA move is 100% going to happen. I think I would still captain Haaland again, scoring another 2 goals in the Champions League, just in unreal form. I know Brentford won against United, but that's United. I would expect City to do well there and him to do well as well. So I don't really want to overthink the captaincy. So that's the team for Gameweek 7, which I think is relatively simple. Moving ahead to Gameweek 8 is where it gets challenging for my team, and I do want to talk a little bit more in depth about what my plans are here. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts as well in the comments. What would you do with my team? When we get to Gameweek 8, the decision is this. Is the team bad enough to warrant a wild card and then get those Arsenal players in when they actually have a relatively tough couple of games? Fulham away, Palace at home. Because that's the main thing I think this team is missing, is those Arsenal players. Again, if I do take a hit for an Arsenal defender, it's slightly different. But what do you think? I just don't think this team, just looking at it on paper like this, warrants a wild card when I put the players in that I think would play. I feel like I'm sort of like just getting through game weeks rather than having a team that I'm really confident in. But with one free transfer this week, I think my plan would be to sell Watkins for either Mateta, Bowen, or if I don't do that Arsenal defender move, I could go up to Gyökeres and have double Arsenal attack. So it'd be one of these three. Say I went for Gyökeres. This would be my team for free in game week 8, barring injuries, of course. Again, I would play Paqueta, who then goes on a really good run of fixtures for a new West Ham side, and obviously I play Senesi as well. Doesn't matter what fixture he has. And just like that, like the team looks pretty good. Probably would play Sanchez as well, but does that warrant a wild card? I don't know. It's a tough one because I don't want to be behind everyone else and just thinking, well, I'm just sort of getting through each game week and not really ever being in a position that I need to use a wild card. But, eventually I'm going to run out of game weeks. When we get towards game week 16, I think at that point the wild card is sort of worthless, or you've lost a lot of value from it because you get those 5 free transfers, obviously, for AFCON. So that is the decision that I'm thinking of right now. And again, I am slightly leaning towards wildcarding in game week 8. A lot of that does depend on the form of Mo Salah, because I would absolutely love to have a fit and firing Mo Salah in my team as a big differential. I know he's 44% owned, but amongst sort of elite managers, those of us watching the video right now, if I'm allowed to say that, for this run. Man United at home, Brentford away, Villa at home. I mean, that's really good. Forest at home, even West Ham away. Imagine having a Haaland and Salah team there when everyone else can't really get there. Also, Palmer coming back after game week 7, the international break. I mean, immediately Forest away, entry fixture, then Sunderland at home. It's all right. There are options with a wild card, and playing it over an international break as well, I think would be great, because there's inevitably going to be injuries and changes in the football landscape. I'm not sure right now. And I don't want to lie on these videos and say I'm 100% locked into this plan when I'm not, because that just wouldn't be honest. I think that I will just take the one move this week if Porro is going to play and get Saka in for Florian Wirtz, who I think at this point just has to leave the team, and then reassess in game week 8. Okay, let's go back to my team for game week 7. I do want to have a look at the AI recommended transfers for my team. I'm going to do this with and without setting my chip strategy as well. Okay, Williams to Gabriel is the recommendation. So I think the AI thinks that, yeah, Gabriel long-term is a very good pick. I think he probably is the best Arsenal pick when fit. Again, like if he is fit for that West Ham game, it is a plum fixture. He's not going to score in every game, is he? But it just, as a non-owner, it does feel like that. And I can't imagine watching that game, knowing how poor West Ham are from defending corners, set pieces, and knowing just what a monster he is. It's going to be brutal. So that is the recommendation, which I think does make sense. Not to take a hit this week anyway. I don't really think it is needed. Again, even getting Saka in, if you look at just the pure predicted points, he's not at a level, I think, above a midfielder that I'd be benching. Say if it was a Paqueta even, maybe for that to be worth the transfer over a Gabriel or to be worth the hit. Now what I'll do is I will set my wildcard for game week 8 and see how that affects things with the recommendations. And the recommendation is to make no transfer, so quite passive. But I suppose the team is decent enough to not warrant using a transfer this week. I'm not sure I'd agree with that. I do think it's worth making a transfer and getting Saka in for Florian Wirtz this week. I think there's enough upside there, despite what the predicted points might say. But the point of this, I think, is when you are wildcarding in the next week, there really isn't much time for the transfers you're making in the previous week, this week, to have the benefit of getting the points that you need from each transfer. I've not really worded that well, but if you make a transfer and you're going to wildcard in 10 weeks, you're giving that transfer 10 weeks to come to pay off, really. Whereas if you're wildcarding the next week, you're only getting one game for that transfer to be worth it, because obviously when you wildcard, you can make unlimited transfers. So I think that's the reason why it's recommending no transfers. And obviously you can roll through a lot of transfers now through the wildcard, and that is the difference. That's probably why this is the case compared to years before when it wasn't. But there we go. Those are my recommendations. If you want to get yours, guys, as always, you can see top of the screen. Get your recommended transfers right now, 50% off, link down below. Again, I've said it on different videos, but I love the fact that if you know you're going to free hit in Gameweek 13, for example, or if you haven't used your bench boost or triple captain yet, and you know you're going to use those chips in a certain week, or even if you don't and you want to see how your recommendations change when you put in potential weeks you might use these chips, it's a really good tool to use, because obviously, as you can see, it does change things. And yeah, one site may say, well, you know, it's worth taking a hit this week. But if you can tell it, well, I'm going to be wildcarding the next week, how does that affect things? In theory, that should change things anyway. So that is why I really like Fantasy Football Hub's AI recommended transfers. So there we go. That is going to do it for my team. This is what it's probably going to look like, almost definitely, I would say. I will wait for news on Porro. If it looks like he's not going to start, then the hit for an Arsenal defender does become more tempting. But let me know, what would you do with my team? Some of you in the comments are quite, well, let's just say you talk the talk in the comments in a good way, because I like hearing your opinions. So please get in the comments down below. Let me know if you agree with my thinking, what you would do. First of all, would you do Wirtz to Saka, or would you do a defender to Gabriel, or would you do both for a hit? And then most importantly, I think, game week 8, wildcard. I know I've talked about it a lot in this video, but it really does affect my team for this week and my transfers. If I'm not going to do it, I will be more inclined to take that hit. But yeah, let me know if you think that this team on screen, with potentially Gyökeres coming in, requires a wildcard in game week 8. My team's in a sort of flux position right now. I could go one of both ways. I normally do like being aggressive with the wildcard, but I feel like I've held it long enough now and my rank is decent enough that I don't need to necessarily go out of my way to use it. Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. As always, make sure to get your team rated for free down below. And if you want to see your recommended transfers, sign up to Fantasy Football Hub. I will catch you after the international break.